The cancer problem is still one of the most important issues in modern medicine. The relevance of the problem of cancer fully depends on success in development of effective methods of prevention and treatment of malignant tumors. Both the steady increase in the annual incidence and mortality due to malignant tumors in the world prove this obvious statement. Moreover, we must admit the fact that the current scientific understanding of the etiology and pathogenesis of malignant tumors in many respects are not applicable in clinical practice. At the same time, the accumulated scientific data allow us to revise ideas about the pathogenesis of malignant tumors. Many years of our research, unbiased clinical trials, and extensive analysis of the scientific literature allowed us to offer a new perspective of the pathogenesis of malignant tumors. In order to solve the global problem of malignant tumors, enormous resources and tens of billions of dollars have been spent all around the world. Tens of millions of scientific research data have been published on cancer in the world. By the year 2030, the cost of cancer treatment will exceed hundreds of billions of dollars. At the same time, according to the World Health Organization, a long-term prognosis for morbidity and mortality from cancer is very poor. The economic damage will be calculated in trillions of dollars. In various countries of the world, national oncology programs end in failure because of the lack of the expected results. Russian National Cancer Program has been also terminated because of the inefficiency since January 1st of this year. According to the modern concepts, the etiologic factor in the development of malignant tumors is exposure to exogenous carcinogens, chemical, physical, and biological. Existing idea of fundamental oncology on etiology of malignancies are not applicable in clinical practice. Thus, for example, identification of the etiological factors in each case is not performed. Accordingly, etiotropic treatment of cancer in clinical practice does not exist. Moreover, the current and developing cancer treatments, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, virotherapy, are themselves have carcinogenic effects. The impact of carcinogens on carcinogenesis reminds the process of the fire extinguishing with gasoline and indicates the failure of modern scientific comprehension of the cancer etiology from point of view of the fundamentals of clinical medicine. The pathogenesis of malignant tumors from the modern scientific position is the process of cells' genetic apparatus damage which leads to the development of malignant tumors. In other words, cancer develops from a single cell with damaged genetic apparatus due to the process of carcinogenesis. The detailed molecular genetic events of carcinogenesis are presented on this slide. It has to be particularly emphasized that the modern scientific idea of the cancer pathogenesis is limited exclusively by molecular genetic level of the body. So, for the application of the pathogenetically substantiated therapy for cancer, diagnostic of pathogenetically significant genome damage needed, region-wide clinical practice is not ever performed. Pathogenetically substantiated therapy of malignant tumors, unfortunately, does not exist. What modern science-based therapy of cancer directed to? From the standpoint of modern fundamental oncology, cancer cells have a number of properties, and all the manifestations of the cancer process are a result of the functioning of cancer cells. The modern methods of cancer treatment directed exactly to these properties of cancer cells. This means that the existing cellular molecular genetic landmarks of fundamental oncology are not applicable for use in clinical practice. Because from this point of view, the clinician should treat pile rabbit cells, not a human. In terms of clinical medicine, it turns out that modern methods of treatment of malignant tumors are symptomatic. So, there is a deep gap between fundamental and clinical oncology, such as a significant difference in the education of biologists and physicians. In clinical practice, there are a number of phenomena and issues are difficult to explain from a standpoint of fundamental oncology. For example, why there occur in some patients on the background of the symptomatic treatment of malignant tumors? Why are there cases of spontaneous regression of malignant tumors and recovery? Why doesn't a constant formation of malignant tumor cells in the human body tumor disease develop at all? And many other questions. In our view, to overcome the existing gap, there is a need in a new concepts of pathogenesis of malignant tumors, which would combine the accumulated theoretical, experimental, clinical experience and to introduce new approaches to treatment of malignant tumors. In our opinion, widely accepted in modern medicine axiom that carcinogenic DNA damage sufficient to cause cell malignancy is a systemic error. There are many scientific facts indicating that it is not enough to have the carcinogenic damage to the cell's DNA for the development of malignant disease. At the same time, there is numerous scientific evidence suggesting that the origin, development, and relapse of malignant tumors depend on inhibition of anti-tumor immunity. In other words, the suppression of anti-tumor immunity is the main factor of existence of malignant tumors. A comprehension of importance of anti-tumor immunity suppression in the development of malignant tumors has led to a significant number of methods for its activation, with expectations of a radical improvement of cancer treatment efficiency. Indeed, there are impressive results in animal models. However, results in experimental clinical trials with carefully selected patients have been pretty modest. Moreover, the use of immunotherapy in a wide clinical practice was also unsafe. In this regard, we questioned ourselves. Why is it not possible to overcome the suppression of anti-tumor immunity of cancer patients in clinical practice? We proposed that there is a presence of some systemic factor in patients with malignant tumors, which can cause a persistent suppression of anti-tumor immunity and actively participate in the development of malignant tumor disease. In order to detect this systemic factor, we appeal to the phenomenon of spontaneous regression of cancer. The phenomenon of spontaneous regression of cancer is a complete or partial, temporary or permanent disappearance of all or some signs and symptoms of diagnosed malignant tumor disease, in the absence of medical care or treatment that doesn't have a sufficient explanation of tumor regression. It's believed that an understanding of this mysterious phenomenon will help us find the key to the whole problem of cancer. So far, this phenomenon remains a mystery. An analysis of the scientific data reveals quite a surprising fact when comparing the frequency of spontaneous regression of cancer in animals, 80%, and in humans, 1 in 140,000 or even 1 per 1 million. The difference was 100,000 times. This indicates that there is a fundamental difference between humans and animals, which is known as the presence of higher nervous activity and second signal system speech in humans. It turns out that the higher nervous activity is a constant systemic factor that can suppress anti-tumor activity of the immune system and stimulate malignant tumor growth. We studied the relationship of higher nervous activity and anti-tumor immunity in cancer patients. Some of their results are shown on this slide. One of the most important findings was the discovery of the phenomenon of spontaneous activation of anti-tumor immunity when higher nervous activity disorders of cancer patients have been treated, regardless of their histological type. In other words, suppression of anti-tumor immunity in cancer patients is reversible and caused by disorders of higher nervous activity. The failure of the clinical application of various methods of immunotherapy of cancer correlated to untreated disorders of higher nervous activity. So, the confirmation that the development of malignant tumor disease depends largely on a state of higher nervous activity in cancer patients has been received. Analysis of scientific data has allowed us to conclude that the suppression of anti-tumor immunity is not always a pathological phenomenon. It has also been observed in normal physiological conditions such as tissue repair. Thus, when the local tissue injury happens on the background of the relative balance of the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system directions, the lesion develops a local temporary inflammatory reaction to maintain cell proliferation necessary for tissue repair. At the same time, a temporary local physiological suppression of anti-tumor immunity develops to ensure successful repair. Otherwise, proliferating cells would be destroyed on the background of active anti-tumor immunity because they are similar to malignant cells by their phenotype. This would hinder tissue repair and recovery. Upon completion of the repair and restoration of tissue, local inflammatory reaction fade away and restoration of the local activity of anti-tumor immunity takes place. This physiological process turns to be pathophysiological when multiple foci of microdamages appear in combination with sympatico or hypersympaticotonia. At the same time, the inflammatory reaction becomes constant and systemic chronic, along with constant and systemic suppression of anti-tumor immunity. Under these conditions, the appearance of malignant cells among normal proliferating cells is greatly facilitated, what enables not only their smooth existence, but continuous support of immune system for malignant tumor growth. Such pathophysiological mechanism, which forms the basis for the pathogenesis of cancer, we named cancer reparative trap. This slide highlights the key pathogenetic links, which in the long run should become a target for the use of pathogenetically substantiated methods of cancer treatment and primary prevention of cancer. This new view on the pathogenesis of malignant tumors allows to develop a new approach to the pathogenetically substantiated treatment of malignant tumors. The basis for this approach is the elimination of the state of cancer reparative trap. The offered activities of this approach are presented in the slide, including development of new combined drugs. Introduced new pathogenesis of malignant tumors allows also develop pathogenetically based interventions for primary prevention of cancer. The basis for the primary prevention of cancer is early detection and relief of the pathological condition of the body, which is condition of cancer reparative trap. Proceeding from the above, anyone can imagine the contribution of the three key factors in the development of malignant disease. Damage to the genetic apparatus of cells is necessary for the emergence of cancer cells, but not enough for the development of tumors. Inhibition of anti-tumor immunity causes the appearance of the local process of the formation of malignant tumor, such as groups of cancer cells. However, is not enough for the development of cancer disease, and only a violation of the higher nervous activity with the imbalance of the autonomic nervous system towards sympatico-hypersympaticotonic domination causes the formation of a tumor disease as a systemic process, as a pathological condition of the body. As the confirmation of the determining role of the stress in the development of hypersympaticotonia in malignant tumors We can use data of Erika Sloan and colleagues from Monash University on the multiplication of the tumor mass and 30-fold increase in tumor metastasis in stressed mice compared to non-stressed mice. In our view, inability to control cancer process and efficiency of current anti-cancer therapy due to the presence of general systemic error in comprehension of the nature of cancer. Systemic error default contained in the definition of cancer as a disease of genetic apparatus of the cell, and this axiom requires scientific review. Unfortunately, the present report does not allow us to present all information on the proposed pathogenesis of malignant tumors, including various immunological aspects and the results of clinical trials with new approach. Detailed information can be found in a number of our previous publications. The most recent was published in the Journal of Cancer Treatment and book chapter in a book, Updates on Cancer Treatment, published by InTech in this year. Thank you for your attention.